The amount of progress at the park right now is mind-boggling, and FunSpot is just teasing us online even more. Let's try to sort it all out. What's up guys, Dr. Coaster here on behalf of the Georgia Coaster Connection, and welcome back to another ArieForce One construction update. Before we get started, I just want everyone to know that all photos and footage included in any of these construction updates are free to use with credit. I'd also like to thank my Georgia Coaster Connection partner Christopher as we gathered this content together. I'll link his pages down below. I made my way back out to FunSpot Atlanta on Thursday, June 9th, and the number of things that were going on blew my mind. This is the first time I had visited the park on a busy weekday during the summer, and RMC and park guests are cohabiting perfectly. I had heard concerns of people thinking this would slow down construction, and that is not the case at all. RMC has worked predominantly during the weeks during the early park season, so we haven't been able to see them on the job much at all until now. When we left off last time, RMC had just completed installing the longest zero-G stall in North America, and a new ride was being added to the park. FunSpot also officially closed the mini golf courses permanently, and RMC continued to tear up more concrete and prepare footers for the remaining of ArieForce One's layout. Oh yeah, and let's not forget about that massive clearing behind the parking lot that the park has been fairly silent about until recently. So let's start this week's update right there. When I arrived to the park, crews were actively working to continue preparing this land for whatever it may end up being. I initially thought that this would for sure be a parking lot expansion, but they are actively digging in spots and seem to be doing more than just leveling out land. I don't know much about construction, but something seems up. I'm sure at least part of this will be an expansion for parking because they desperately need it, but I'm starting to think FunSpot might be up to something. And seeing this area isn't my only inkling as to why. If you look back behind this plot of land, they were actively working back there as well, towards the back of the park's own property. This area used to be the storage area for RMC as new shipments arrived to the park, but that has since moved, and I managed to find out where this week. It was when I was checking out the progress of the section of the ride behind the arcade that I noticed vehicles going to and from this area seen here, back behind the beginning of the ground hugger. With all the continued progress, I knew steel must have been stored somewhere, and it appears to be here as a spot of the stack of supports sitting back there. Speaking of supports, it doesn't look like anything crazy happened behind the arcade this week, but don't worry, there's plenty of progress in ArieForce One elsewhere. Jumping from the back of the arcade to the front, I went to check in on the side of the future barrel roll. However, on my way there, you can't help but notice all the new awnings that the park installed this week across the park. One thing FunSpot Atlanta lacked before was shaded areas, and this took care of it across the park. These are scattered all the way from Screaming Eagle to the area surrounding ArieForce One. It'll be easy to relax here and take in the ride once it opens. From one of the new shaded areas, I grabbed this video of the footer for the barrel roll, showing that nothing significant occurred this week. But if you turn around, it is a totally different story. Last week we saw RMC put the frames of multiple new footers in place, which will eventually support the quad down and final brake run. This week, those footers have been poured and have begun curing, meaning that they will be ready in 3 to 4 weeks time. Looking further down towards the arcade, RMC was actively working to prep this land to be poured soon as well. Following the pattern of the past few weeks, I'd expect footers to be installed here within the next week. This will be some of the last concrete needed to be poured to be able to complete the ride. And speaking of concrete, we have even more that was about to be poured near the lift hill. Based off of the size and location of the large one, I imagine that this is ArieForce One's station starting to take shape for the first time. There is also more wood and rebar nearby that I expect to be used here, as well as down by the arcade on the plot of land just mentioned. With all that was going on, I was thrilled to see that the Ferris wheel was running, and I took a couple of spins to get some better angles. From the Ferris wheel, I noticed that RMC had also begun installing the beginnings of the chain lift, and had placed the final piece of the track at the base of it. Seeing this reminded me that we still don't know what the pre-lift section will look like for ArieForce One, so I can't wait to report on that when the time comes. From the very top of the Ferris wheel, I was able to confirm the new storage area behind the arcade, but I wasn't able to get a decent shot of it. Probably because I was most excited to see that there was movement down near the Raven Trust dive. This hyped up element has been sitting dormant since the footers were poured, while the rest of the ride shot up around it. But as of this week, the Raven Trust dive has officially gone vertical, and based off of how fast the rest of the ride goes once this happens, I expect this to be connected to the rest of the ride very soon. Now on to the big announcement that FunSpot was supposed to be making this week. The park has been making ArieForce Friday posts for a while now, keeping guests up to date on the general progress of the ride. And to be inundated with people begging for an opening date. While I was expecting the announcement of the tilt-a-whirl and other new rides, this week they announced a $24 ticket sale for the park that I highly recommend if you want to be able to marathon ArieForce One for cheap. The sale should still be live as of the uploading of this video. Besides that, the park also teased a new land clearing behind the parking lot for the first time. And as for the tilt-a-whirl, I actually caught it testing this week, as you're seeing on screen. And man, does it look good with his light package. This thing is going to pop at night. If this week's progress was any indication, we're in for even more exciting developments next week. Stay tuned. Thank you all for watching. That was the 14th of many ArieForce One construction updates to come. If you don't want to miss out on more construction updates like this, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, as many more of these will be coming out leading up to the opening of the ride. If you haven't already, then also be sure to follow Georgia Coaster Connection over on Instagram, your home for all things ArieForce One. If you're feeling inclined, then you can follow me as well at Dr_Coaster. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.